Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DevOps Modernization Summit. We are here to talk about how AI coding assistants are transforming developer productivity, accelerating innovation like never before. But with this rapid growth comes new challenges and in the DevOps and to the DevOps and platform team. How do you provide the right infrastructure, tools, and processes to sustain this? Another key question that comes to mind is how can DevOps and platform teams benefit from these AI agents? We'll dive into some strategies, both for building scalable, intelligent platforms that empower developers while managing complexity and use cases for AI across software delivery lifecycle. Joining us today are industry experts, Sean Fretenborough from CDK Global and Nick Ness from 84 and 51, who will share their insights on balancing speed with stability and ensuring teams are set up for success in an AI-driven world. Sean and Nick, would love to get an introduction from you about yourself and your role. Nick, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Yeah, my name is Nick Ness, and I'm a director of DevOps at 8451. So we're a retail media data science company underneath the umbrella of the Kroger Co. And so effectively what we try to provide both for Kroger and our customers is insights onto how shoppers operate within our stores and solutions for those outside vendors to place ads on our site that help people, guide to their products and provide understanding of buying habits and what people want to know, what they want to buy next. Give them a coupon, help them in that shopping journey.
Sean.
Nice. Yes. Sean Fretenborough here. I'm a senior director of site reliability, AppSec, and dev platforms at CDK Global. And we are an automotive SaaS organization. We provide the platforms for dealerships across the U.S. to sell, service, and manage their dealerships. And thank you for being here.
Awesome. Incredible work at both the organizations. What are your thoughts on coding assistants?
Yeah, I mean, we at 8451, we have a limited deployment of coding assistants due to some legal and policy concerns that happen within our larger organization. And so we're using GitHub's Copilot right now with some of the models available. And largely we see people using them to do things like add and understand test and then understand their code that's inside of maybe a new repo to them, and explore like how an API works on the other side, whether that's an internal API or a third party. The ability to upload docs and then ask it questions about it has been super useful for our teams to develop their new code or integrate with a new product. Sean, what about you?
Yeah. So we actually have a few pockets of developers using code assistants, and we come across a few, I think typical use cases around test case generation. But for our organization, one of the use cases that really helped accelerate our ability to support the product organization is the understanding code. So, in both our security spaces, I own AppSec, and within my dev platform space, we have the need to be able to understand what some of the code does to better support our developers in using that or updating their code for security vulnerabilities, etc. So, one of the problems with historically has always been, I don't know what this code actually does in context. But AI Code Assist in the case of Harness helps us understand the code. And it saved us a tremendous amount of time there, and it was a use case I hadn't originally expected to pan out as well as it had.
That's pretty cool. So maybe we go beyond coding and talk about DevOps and platform teams. Coding essentially is just one part of the SDLC. What other parts of the SDLC can AI be useful?
Yeah, let me jump in on this one. This is so where we use use AI significantly is in the security space. And for us, DevSecOps is a core is a core foundation of the services that my organization delivers. And one of the benefits of or the way that AI has helped change the way that we manage security vulnerabilities is that in the case of Harness's security testing orchestration engine, we're able to put in a number of different scanners that are scanning everything from SAS to DAS to SCA. And again, what do you do with the vulnerability results? Getting a sheet of results saying, hey, this stuff is vulnerable. These are the CVVs that we've hit, doesn't help enable the developer to know how to solve the problem. So historically, our AppSec team has had to engage one-on-one on a vulnerability by vulnerability basis. The game changer here is that it helped provide one additional level of support, and that it kind of tells you, this is what you need to do for this vulnerability. This is how you can address this vulnerability in context. And, in those situations where it's, the developer still has a problem or still doesn't understand quite what to do, our team is able to then to engage and already have a starting point, because they see what the AI recommendation is. They see the code because of AI Copilot, the AI assistants. They understand what the context of that code is quickly. It has saved us a tremendous amount of time. We're able to essentially instrument 100% of our code base through the various pipeline scanners, shifting security left, and we're curating those with false positives and understanding what the true vulnerabilities are, and then enabling the product teams to deliver.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a cool use case for sure. I think some of the areas where we've seen it are similar. We've done a little bit of exploratory work on the security front for the same reasons that Sean highlighted. Another area where we're interested in is incident response, and how do we use AI to help our teams respond faster to those incidents, whether that's what are my, how is this service connected to this other service that's failing, and why is that causing my service to fail? Some of that's just kind of standard APM data, but as we start building more and more complex systems, they get harder to reason about over time. Or if you're, a new SRE or someone coming into a team for the first time, you're not familiar with that ecosystem, you can start to use AI to help you gain that understanding more quickly. The other two cases that we see outside of SDLC in our organization is the use of AI in understanding data, or what of data is available to you. So, the Snowflakes or Databricks land where we're dealing with a lot of data, or lots of different types of data, starting to understand how do we, what kind of data do I have? Oh, okay, I've got these different 4 classes. How can I start to plug those together? Oh, I can use AI to generate that query that's going to help me see what those 2 things line up with. And the last case is, we have both internal development of AIs within our company, but also how do we safely leverage third-party AI, right? So that's whether that's Copilot or ChatGPT. And so we have actually an internal gateway that allows internal customers to upload and use those tools safely without leaking that data out to the third party that we wouldn't want them to. And I think that's probably one of the cooler ones. That team highlighted it recently, and kind of was pushing people hey, here's the link, just it's out here, you can use it anytime you want. And so that's been a cool thing to play around with, where I personally had not used those ChatGPT super often. It was interesting to see it kind of endorsed so publicly through this secure portal internally.
That's really cool. I think, Nick, so one of the interesting things I've noticed is that I'm seeing these pockets of innovation within the developer community,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be kind of driving down the road as normal, and then the next thing you know, you're sitting in a presentation you got invited to, and the cool stuff like that will pop up. And I don't know that I see that kind of excitement in other technologies, where team after team is coming up with. We'll have a hackathon, and they'll have leveraged AI in a different, unique way. That's wow, that's really cool. Yeah. This is, it's an enabler to do things that we hadn't even considered before, and it's popping up so readily. When we talk about one of the challenges we always run into is adoption. Like you come out with these technologies, or whether it's test automation, or or building building unit tests, and or deploying security. Getting adoption is always like setting up the platform. We could do that all day long. We build it and then it just sits there, right? But I think there's this level of eagerness where it's the kind of the tail wagging of the dog. The developer community is like pushing. Can we do X? Can we do Y? Can we get access to this or that? And it's a level of excitement I haven't seen in this space, and I've been in it for over 20 years.
Yeah, I think I feel like I'm getting almost daily pings from a couple of people about like, hey, can you turn on this experimental feature in GitHub? And I gotta check the box. Okay, yep, that looks okay. Like, let's turn that on. I think your story reminded me of this team is starting to play with the agentic model of like feeding in these details, letting it add some tasks. Oh, okay, these are things I need to do. Oh, actually, I'll go run this build because now I've changed code. So like the next logical step is running the build. And so starting to see how people are playing with that like newer and newer edge of features has been really interesting, from both like teams that are really high engaged with the technology, and then seeing how that bleeds out into the rest of the organization with teams that are less engaged, but like are seeing this example, in an internal demo. Yeah, I think that the one area that I'm trying to figure out wrap my head around in DevOps and how to modernize with AI is like, where does it make the most sense to like push emphasis on like, hey, developers, these are really good features to use with DevOps in AI, like understanding your API, your services dependencies, probably great, but deploying to production, maybe not great, right? Like maybe that's an area where I'm a little scared right now, and I want to figure out, what do I trust in this system? So I think, we've got policy concerns that we guide us from, corporate level down. And then we've got like policy concerns from our team that we want to make sure people are using some of these tools in a responsible way. And figuring out where that line is, from local development up through production is still, I think, a moving target right now, right? It's not settled. So we'll see how it goes. Like, I think it was, the next year or two is going to see something that we probably won't even imagine today, right? As the changes percolate up the, both the enterprise ladder and the capability set changes.
So as you just mentioned that, you're not quite comfortable with the technology hitting production, what are some ways you can put those guardrails or policies out there to control, to make it be in production, but at the same time be in that guardrail zone or in governed zone?
Sure. Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that one of those ways is, that internal portal. So that's one measure that we're using where we're still able to use third-party, LLMs or AI resources while still having a little bit of control on how people are using it. And, there's monitoring on that system, making sure we're using it in a responsible way, and even blocking some things that we know look like, hey, this is probably not a way we'd want you to use the system. For in the, DevOps and SDLC world, I think some of those guardrails are, how do we do code review process, right? Okay, the AI has helped with the code review, but we still want a person to sign off on it. We don't want to just give the AI the only ability to check mark and say, let's merge that in. But that, like Sean's point about the security stuff earlier, understanding it, maybe, certain things like, hey, we're just patching this little bit of software. Well, the AI checkmark might be good enough for something that's simple like that. And we put some policy constraints around what types of things we'd say, hey, this is okay enough for AI to just merge on its own. We don't have to go and back check every single, minor dependency patch. But maybe if it's a major version change and it's going to have to require code changes, where the AI might help you in your editor make those changes, but we're not going to let it make the changes just wholly on its own and give itself a good, a green check. I think that's like a area where it's going to be a partnership model with the LLMs, not like them doing it all for us. The other major one I think is, just around resource usage, right? So I'm sure Sean sees this too, like as people build out more, more platforms, or they start generating more code, that requires more build capacity, that requires more production deployment availability. And so those, starting to make sure we start thinking about like, how does like FinOps come into the play of this world of many new things with AI, and helping people understand that, you make this change, it's going to cost you this much more money. I could start to see an LLM have a response model that helps you think about, oh, maybe I shouldn't, make that change quite that way because it's going to cost 3 or 4 times as much to run my infrastructure now if I do that change. So there's simple ways to do that today, but I would be really interested to see how those companies that are dealing with like helping you manage costs start to incorporate that model of like making it more easy for you to understand the change and how it's going to roll out.
I totally, I'm with you there. We've been lucky enough to have built out a fairly robust FinOps organization, not within my organization, within one of my peer organizations, because of our heavy usage of AWS as we've been kind of growing out our overall footprint. And we found that there are, when you start dealing with consumption models, and now it's not just my my hosting providers anymore that are doing consumption. It's like everything from artifact registers to my the number of synthetics that I run on my observability platform. It's everywhere I'm going now. It's consumption is becoming the trigger, and so that particular organization also has to adapt. How do we monitor our Snowflake instances and start educating users on how you how you manage the cost there and how you manage the cost here in AI as well. Something else you had mentioned, around getting faith or trusting AI in production. I kind of see AI as like an intern or a new hire, right? In the same type of logic that you would apply to that new developer that comes into your organization. At least in most places, they're not committing code to prod right out the chute, right? They're getting some robust, hopefully some robust code reviews or peer reviews, and once they kind of pass the peer review check, then they're deploying to maybe a smaller application or to pre-prod first, and then fully tested before it hits production. I don't see why we would treat AI any differently, right? We look at the code. I'm sure there's a million stories where people are using AI just for regular like communications and not qualifying the output. Take that to something as complicated as code, and then the nightmares are sure to come. And those are going to be some interesting stories I'm sure we're going to hear in the next year to 2 years as we start getting more agentic based AI employees that are coming in and doing our PhD level development and the type of output that they're going to do. It's going to be an interesting, fun set of stories people are going to compile there. But yeah, quality. You have to check. You have to check the output until you have enough data points to say you have faith.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're trying to leverage to help us with that like safety valve on the other side is the model of like understanding like, hey, I deployed this. Now my app is erroring, a lot. Oh, that's bad. And we can do that up and down the stack. So like in Harness's case, we're leveraging continuous validation to say, hey, that deployment is working. At least from the baseline, hey, it's throwing lots of errors, no, it's not throwing lots of errors, right? Does this look like it did before? Okay, that's at least one safety valve that like you're saying, Sean, like one check mark that we think is okay. Now, does it actually do what you want it to do? That's a separate check mark. But at least, we didn't just add an error clause to every single request that's coming through and now everything's broken. So I think that like that model of building, like thinking about how do we leverage it, not just in like the natural language portion, but also with like safety valves along the process, right? That might be a safety valve at local dev, that might be a safety valve in production, and those can all start to leverage some form of machine learning or LLM, depending on where we're talking about. And I think that's an easy incremental way to start building up that safety checks to say like, yes, we do trust this more. Okay, now how can we start to, maybe we do start letting people use natural language to do a production deployment because we do start to trust that system more when it's got an appropriate set of checks behind it that say this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Okay, nope, this is mission critical system. That one's never going to get that safe. It's never going to get that AI in production. But maybe the like experimental demo projects that we know are not a production thing. Sure, why not? Like let them like get it all the way through to production for that demo project with AI. If it helps them move faster or improve that idea out, then we can say, oh, okay, let's take that now, turn it into a fully productionized app. I could totally see something like that being a way that we power AI throughout this ecosystem.
So you talk about, production deployments and putting those guardrails. So that must mean that there are some of the process changes that have to come in play in order to make this happen. So what are those changes that are needed to handle this high velocity of code changes that the teams are pushing out now?
You know, for us, our philosophy is very much, quality over velocity, right? So that is kind of it's been ingrained in our culture, and it's been getting hardened, quarter over quarter as we kind of continue to focus on putting out quality products, stable products. But that said, there is that inherent trade-off when you focus a lot on quality. How do you focus on velocity? Because at the end of the day, you do have to deliver product and you have to deliver features to the customer. For us, it's that balance of allowing for exploration, while at the same time trying to create a place where you know that no one's going to fall off the edge. And we have fortunately we're both producers of AI, as well as consumers. So internally within the product engineering space, we have architects who happen to work in both sides of the world, and they're working on building out a framework of governance and policies to help the organization as a whole be able to kind of navigate, the trenches. For us, one of the big things too is, as as an interim, as we start introducing new AI platforms, etc., we have a very rigorous security review process. Is it a contained instance? Is all your data safe, or are you using open source? And if you are, what kind of data are you putting into that? Some of the lessons I think the industry as a whole has kind of come to learn over the course of the last 18 months, which I think are the more obvious. But some of the less obvious things are, how how the information, even internally, if you're putting information into your LLMs, who in other departments may be seeing things that they shouldn't see. So even though we are in this container now, within your own space, not everyone is entitled to see all the same information. So again, areas that we're having to kind of get in front of, and taken as a whole. It's not just the product space; it's it's the rest of the business as well that are using AI in their different ways, whether it's Copilot and Teams, summarizing meetings or PowerPoints, etc. So really, I think it's bringing everyone to the table, having an open, transparent discussion, and then based on that, kind of making some pragmatic decisions around balancing. How do we get that velocity out there without ever compromising your customer's experience?
Yeah, I think we have a similar set of concerns and policies that have been put in place around from both like I mentioned, we have stuff that's coming from we have a responsible AI group within Kroger company, and so that allows us to say, here's ways that we know people are trying to use this, and let's start to maybe get ahead and think a little bit past what the random developer's best new idea is, and let's start to think in the general terms. How do we make sure that you're using us in a way that makes sense for our company, makes sense for our customers, the data that we have, and we have very similar concerns to what Sean highlighted around who has access to what data. Should they be able to see that? If that's fed into an LLM, how does that show up in somewhere else in our ecosystem? All stuff that we're thinking about as well. As far as experimentation, one of the, we try to make sure that we're building out towards the normal, some of the easy normal stuff, like auto scaling infrastructure, right? Hey, you want to experiment with those GPU workloads? All right, let's give you a pool that automatically scales to 0 when you're not running anything, so that your cost overruns don't go crazy. And then some of them are just policy, right? We say, hey, these are the lines that we'd like you to stay inside. If you start going outside of the lines and we catch you, there's going to be bigger consequences than if you don't, right? So I know it's no matter what you do, if you've got admin, you can kind of start to do stuff on your machine that you may not want to do. So it's a balance, right, of policy, and I agree not to do X things, and then where we can, putting in technical boundaries that make sense. I think it's going to be forever, right? With people in the mix, it's going to be a mix of both here are rules that you need to follow, and here are some technical barriers that we're going to try to put in to make sure you're following those rules. Um, the other, some of the future forward things that we're trying to do to help people experiment more quickly are doing things like a branch-based deployment, where you get a whole brand new environment based on just your branch of code. That way you can build and iterate quickly without interacting with other people's workloads. And so as more teams are working with AI, trying out new ideas, having that ability to say, oh, I'm not just on, I need dev right now, like I need test. Well, no, you just get your own environment that everybody can experiment at the same time on their own little slice of the infrastructure. And that's one way that we're looking to support people trying more ideas, getting more frequent feedback without interfering with, just even within your team, but especially across the organization.
Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all our viewers for being here today and listening to Sean and Nick talk about AI and how to modernize DevOps.